Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. So last week was one of the worst that I had seen in the Hot 100 and Billboard for a long time. It was genuinely disheartening trying to put that episode together, pretty painful all things considered. But you know what? The good thing about hitting rock bottom is that you can always recover from it. And while I wouldn't quite say that everything clicked in the Hot 100 here, I do see a lot of signs of improvement that should definitely be called out. Wasn't a great week, but it wasn't bad either. Of course, if we're looking at the top 10, those signs are pretty sparse indeed. Of course, One Dance by Drake featuring Kyla and WizKid had the top spot thanks to steadily increasing airplay, strong sales, and dominant streaming. And at this point, if we don't get a major debut, and soon, I'm not sure what will stop this song from running into the summer lull at the very top. I certainly don't see Can't Stop the Feeling by Justin Timberlake is able to unseat it from number 2. That song might be dominant in sales, but it seemed to peak in airplay this week, and streaming has never been strong. Still enough to keep back Panda by Designer down to number 3, which also peaked in airplay and has far weaker sales, only where it is thanks to streaming, the strength that isn't going away anytime soon. The question becomes there whether or not its margins are enough to hold back Don't Let Me Down by the Chainsmokers featuring Daya for much longer at number 4. Because with both stronger airplay and sales, you would think that'd be a contender, except that actually lost streaming this week, so never mind. The real challenger will probably be This Is What You Came For by Calvin Harris featuring Rihanna rising up to number 5, which is now dominating YouTube, gaining on streaming with major traction on airplay and sales. Really, it's just a matter of time before it gets any higher. And then we have the Rihanna knockoff Cheap Thrills by Sia featuring Sean Paul rising up to number 6, which picked up major airplay traction to match the sales and even in a streaming boost, which promptly got offset by a slip on YouTube, so go figure. Still probably gonna jump ahead of Work From Home by Fifth Harmony featuring Ty Dolla $ign anyway, which fell down to number 7 as it hemorrhages airplay, slips on streaming, bleeds sales, and loses that number 1 spot on YouTube. My suspicion is that this will be out of the top 10 quite soon, and thank God for that. It did manage to push back Needed Me by Rihanna to number 8, which has airplay and streaming traction, but weaknesses in sales means that it's probably not gonna get a lot higher. Then we have Don't Mind by Kent Jones picking up at number 9, which has traction in pretty much everything with the exception of YouTube, and I really can't be bothered about that song because thank the heavens Ride by 21 Pilots finally cracked the top 10. Now, I don't want to overstate this song's staying power. It picked up huge airplay traction this week and it's got good sales, but its streaming is nowhere near strong and it has no YouTube for an added boost. So its success will be entirely driven off of radio momentum as of now. And with another 21 Pilots song debuting this week, well, let's just say we want to avoid oversaturation because this is a damn great song. Still not quite one of my favorites from the album, but hey, you can't get everything. It's still awesome. But granted, when you take a look at our losers and dropouts, it's clear that you can still get something worthwhile here. I'm not exactly complaining that we lost Exchange by Bryson Tiller, or Somewhere on a Beach by Dierks Bentley, or Might Not by Belly featuring The Weeknd, or Sweatshirt by Jacob Sartorius. Those are all net positive here. And continue with our positives, our losers and dropouts. Okay, a little bit more of a mixed bag in our losers. Drake thankfully continues to lose with Grammys featuring Future 93 and Still Here proving itself wrong to 91. And then there's Shakira's bland Zootopia song Try Everything fell down to 87 after the DVD release fell out. That's why I got the boost last week. Beyond that though, we got the best of our charting songs from Rihanna with Kiss It Better falling to 99. We have Body by Dreezy featuring Jeremiah slipping down to 76 even despite being a pretty decent song. Humble and Kind by Tim McGraw making a graceful dip down to 52. Should be out next week. And oddly, Unsteady by X Ambassadors took a major loss to 60. I thought the alt-rock band might have a little bit more traction here, but turns out they aren't so lucky there. Unfortunately, our gains and returning entries are a lot less promising. Most because in the latter category, we have no returning entries. Let's get this out of the way. The majority of these songs are pretty bad, with My PYT by Wale and Sam Sneak rising up to 80, We Don't Talk Anymore by Charlie Puth and Selena Gomez boring us to mediocrity in 61, and worst of all, Treat You Better by Shawn Mendes rising up to 50. The best thing I can say about our gains is that Broccoli by DRAM and Lil Yachty went up to 65 off its debut last week, but again, it's only a decent song. Lil Yachty's verse should have been cut, and just like most records coming from the Chance the Rapper camp, it desperately needs someone to fix that mix balance. But hey, I guess we'll take what we can get here. But that brings us to our list of new arrivals. Let's hope there's more quality here, starting off with number 100, Nights on Fire by David Day.
Sunset melts on the blue wave, blackbird watching on the telephone wire, whiskey on the lips and the night's on fire, little stars close enough to touch, July promise in the back of that truck, but every move was taking you high, we trying to play
Okay, let me start with a question for you all. How many of you know that David Nail is releasing an album in a month? Better question, how many of you remember that David Nail actually exists? And yet I know that's not particularly fair, but he's always struck me as one of those pop country stars that might have decent intentions but lack the personality or skill as a songwriter to be a lot better. And this track, well, it pretty much fits the majority of that description. For one, while this has been a rising problem in country for some time, whoever pairs a banjo with a drum machine is in for a lot of problems, especially here, especially when the mix is so badly blended, except in this case where the chorus is so completely gutless and almost completely lacking in dynamics. All the instrumentation seems to bleed together, and you will not care about the lyrics. It's by the numbers bro country banality that we've all heard hundreds of times before at this point, and with an oddly muted chorus, David Nail can't even bring even less personality to bear. In other words, I'm only going to cover this new album if there's nothing else out that week, because otherwise, I'm going to forget this song exists. Just saying. Number 92, Why You Always Hatin' by YG featuring Drake and Kamaiyah.
Please, please tell me why you always hate. Why you wait? Please tell me why you always hate. Please, please tell me why you always hate. Why you wait? Please tell me why you always hate. Please, please tell me why you always hate. Why you wait? Please tell me why you always hate. Yeah.
Okay, so much to nearly everyone's surprise, including my own, I actually quite liked YG's sophomore release Still Brazy. It wasn't a great record, but it was definitely a step into making better songs. I'm just a little bit dispirited that this is the single that got the push and not Twist My Fingers, which is way catchier as one of the slickest G-funk instrumentals I've heard in a long time. This, not quite as good, because it pulls YG more into Drake's lane than the other way around, but it's still a decent song. It's a little bit distracting how much YG sounds like 50 Cent on its first verse, and there are a couple dropped rhymes, but overall I think my issue is how much YG is out of his natural comfort zone. Flexing does not really come naturally to him, which he even references on his third verse. Although you could make the argument that driving around an expensive car around his neighborhood is flexing in its own right. But really, Drake is probably the best part of this song. His verse is solid, he plays off the pretty minimalist beat well, and he's more comfortable in this material than YG is. Overall, it's not a bad song, but again, there were better choices for singles off of that album. Number 88, Ain't No Stopping Us Now by Kane Brown.
In a tank top, gonna let the guns out. All about rocking that farmer's tan. Got the share going 70, all the girls looking heavenly. Bunch of kick back and chill out ahead of me. Getting wild, raising hell and leaving this town like there ain't no stopping us now.
Okay, can somebody please tell Kane Brown that with the release of Cole Swindle's sophomore album, You Should Be Here, that bro country is effectively declared dead? It's over. The wave is done, and going viral on Facebook is not gonna change that. But apparently this guy's got enough social media buzz that we're getting this reportedly lead-off single from an upcoming debut album. And I'll give Kane Brown this, he doesn't have a bad voice. He'll be enough to deceive a lot of people into thinking that this song is good because of the overdone fake percussion that's borderline trap, the gutless guitar, the extraneous backing vocals and whistles, and the choppy mix on the final chorus. This is a bro country redux of some of the most overproduced trash I've heard in a while. Want more proof? This song has the lyrics, gonna get the guns out, all about rocking that farmer's tan. Throw in a mention of a dad bod and you have one of the most shamelessly meat-headed bro country anthems I've heard in months. I take Chris Lane's fix over this. You know the song where he bragged about his girl's Walter White high, which is goddamn asinine, but is still more likable than this? Kane Brown, your career is being propped up by dead trends, smart marketing, and Facebook videos. Gross. Skip it. Number 86, What the World Needs Is Love by Broadway for Orlando.
There are mountains and hillsides enough to climb.
There are oceans and rivers
Enough to cross, enough to last
till the end of time.
Okay, there's no way around discussing this song without mentioning the horrible tragedy that happened in an Orlando nightclub a few weeks back, which has become the largest mass shooting in US history. And yeah, to get political here, this appears to be an act of self-hating bigotry that was enabled by religious confusion, a law enforcement that didn't act quickly enough, and US gun laws that are woefully inadequate because the NRA wants to keep a large segment of your population scared enough to want to buy more guns. Keep in mind, folks, the NRA is a lobby for the gun manufacturing industry and the military-industrial complex. complex, not for you, the people. So when they urge politicians to vote against a majority of sensible gun owners when it comes to regulations and even studying the effects of gun violence, they're doing it because they're manipulative hucksters trying to speak for a base that really deserves a lot better. But okay, we're getting off track here. One thing that happened just hours after the shooting was the Tony Awards, Broadway's awards for theater that was rededicated as a tribute to Orlando. But that wasn't enough, and so with the star power that most charity singles can't really draw these days, they basically got everyone who is anyone on Broadway right now and put together a song. And it's probably one of the best examples of a charity single I've heard in a while. A long while back I said near the very beginning of this show, I said I don't tend to like a lot of charity songs for being bloated, overproduced, and often overwrought and a little bit self-satisfied. And yet this song doesn't. It works because it's a pretty good song. A cover of a 1965 Burt Bacharach written jazz standard. And what I kind of like is that the arrangement is rather tastefully done. It avoids the overproduction that tends to cripple many of these songs to level the vocal playing field. Whereas with a set of Broadway stars, it can play to an analogous range and vocal type of these stars. I won't quite say this reaches the same high points as the best charity singles really can, but if you're a Broadway fan and you like to hear a ton of major names contribute with nobody sounding all that bad, yeah, I picked this up. It's a good song and a good cause. Number 78, All in My Head Flex by Fifth Harmony featuring Fetty Wap.
Don't be shy to your thing. It's all in my head. Flex, time to impress. Come and climb in my bed. Don't be shy to your thing. It's all in my head.
So I've been asked to justify why I like Fetty Wap a couple times, and I think this guest appearance is one of the big reasons why. Because I can see him becoming a go-to rapper for guest verses, and he'd probably be a pretty damn good one. He's not one to add cred like was the case for Ludacris or Lil Wayne back in their heydays. He just sounds like he's so happy to be here, and he immediately elevates the energy and the vibe. He's not a particularly good singer or rapper, but he's got enough energy and enthusiasm that when placed in contrast with Fifth Harmony trying to be sexy, he ends up making the best song off of Fifth Harmony's sophomore album 727. And yet, while I'm inclined to give all the credit to Fetty Wap for running away with the song, there are good decisions made across the track. The easiest being that Kamaiyah is barely on it and is easily the worst part when she is. It's much more of Dinah and Normani's song, which is only a positive. And when you anchor it with a pretty decent guitar sample and synth pairing that features Lauren doing a solid pre-chorus, this is actually quite likable. Hell, even the lyrics aren't that bad. It's a mutual ego trip that plays into a decent hookup. I can get behind this. And look, Fifth Harmony, they're not my thing at this point, but this is a good song. If they want to move more in a pop direction like this, yeah, I'd be on board. Check this out. Number 67, Dark Necessities by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You know, on some level, this isn't even fair, because you can have good pop and terrible pop country, and then a veteran funk rock group drop one of the best songs from their most recent album, and it's not even a contest at this point. And yeah, Dark Necessities is awesome, hands down. The piano builds great melody into a killer bass slap with a sharp, plucky guitar line. The interlude has some great organ accents to flesh out the dreamlike vibe, and it ends with a tightly controlled guitar solo that does exactly what it needs to do before breaking into this melancholic ending that's damn near perfect. Even the lyrics work, highlighting the grimy, unsettled darkness need to feed into good art. The sort of twisted and yet hollow feeling that gives the song this real chilly edge. Look, I wasn't really wild about The Getaway as an album, but I like what the Chili Peppers did with this, because it's a kick-ass song. And finally, number 14, Heathens by 21 Pilots.
Wait for them to ask you who you know. Please don't make any sudden moves. You don't know the half of the abuse.
Okay, so remember when I mentioned about 21 Pilots breaking into the top 10 and how I was uncertain that they would last? It ties into a trend you often see with the radio listeners, which tend to be skeptical of newer, weirder sounds. If they do tolerate them, it doesn't tend to be for long. And thus leads to one of two scenarios for the band. They either cut off some of the more interesting edges to placate the mainstream, or they find themselves just muscle off the charts and become maybe one-hit wonders. Now, the buzz was suggesting that Heathens fell into the former category, especially as it's a soundtrack hit for the Suicide Squad movie, and I'd be lying if I said that that wasn't true, because this is really not very good. And it's not because of the writing. 21 Pilots are pretty damn good songwriters, and this is no exception, as they call it the clique for pouncing on who they consider are fake fans, even if the critic has given their two most recent albums very high scores. Since the band is blown up, you can't always tell that why someone might go to 21 Pilots' music for solace, so don't judge them. My issues come in the instrumentation and production. The first being the god-awful vocal layering, which takes both pitched up and pitched down vocals over Tyler Joseph, and it gets distracting. The larger issue comes in that if you're waiting for the song to really explode on the final choruses, take all the desaturated pianos and ominous chugging noises, and yet since 21 Pilots doesn't have a guitarist, we don't get the hammering explosion of guitar to pay everything off, or even heavier blasts of synth. It's planting, but we don't get much of a payoff, and while the bridge kind of tries here, it feels kind of turgid and lacking in punch. Doesn't really do it for me. So okay, not the best note to go out on, but overall this was a pretty good week. Best is easy. Dark Necessities by Red Hot Chili Peppers runs away with it, and I'm giving honorable mention to What the World Needs Is Love by Broadway for Orlando. If it wasn't for Camilla's verse, Fifth Harmony would have gotten it, just saying. Worst are both going to country songs, with Ain't Nobody Stopping Us Now by Kane Brown being the worst, and Nights on Fire by David Nail for being a completely forgettable dishonorable mention. Okay, you know what? Looks like we're finally back on the right track. Let's keep this up. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you.